Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on defining financial well-being. My name is Michael Rausch, and I am the director of the Real Economic Impact Network at the National Disability Institute. Before we get started with our webinar today, I would like to have us go over a few webinar housekeeping tips. And to do that, I'd like to have my colleague, Nakia Matthews, share that information with us. Nakia?
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. The audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Please make sure that your speakers are turned on or your headphones are plugged in. You can control the audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel, which you see a screenshot of here. And if you accidentally close this panel or if the sound stops, you can reopen by going to the Communicate menu at the top of your screen and choosing Join Audio Broadcast. If you do not have sound capabilities on your computer, or if you prefer to listen by phone, you can dial the toll or toll-free number you see here and enter the meeting code. Please note that you do not need to enter an attendee ID. Real-time captioning is provided during this webinar. For those using a PC, you can access the captions by clicking the Media Viewer button in the upper right-hand corner. If you are a Mac user, the Media Viewer panel will automatically be open in the lower right-hand corner of the webinar. If you would like to make the Media Viewer panel larger, you can do so by minimizing some of the other panels like chat and Q&A. And conversely, if you do not need the Media Viewer panel, you can close it. We will have time for questions during this webinar. Please use the chat box or the Q&A box to send any questions you may have to either myself, Nakia Matthews, or Michael Rausch, and we will direct those questions accordingly during the Q&A portion. If you are listening by phone only and not logged into the web portion, you may also ask questions by emailing them directly to Michael at mrausch@ndi-inc.org. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and that the materials will be placed on the NDI website. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box to send me, Nakia Matthews, a message, or you may email me at nmatthews@ndi-inc.org. And I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
Great. Thank you, Nakia. And thank you to each of you for participating on today's webinar as we celebrate National Financial Capability Month. For those of you who are new to the National Disability Institute, I would like to share with you brief information on our organization. The National Disability Institute is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to building a better economic future for Americans with disabilities. We are the first national organization committed exclusively to championing economic empowerment, asset development, and financial stability for all persons across the full spectrum of disabilities. National Disability Institute affects change through public education, training, technical assistance, and policy development to help the 1 in 3 Americans with disabilities living in poverty take steps towards brighter financial futures. To learn more about the National Disability Institute, go to www.realeconomicimpact.org. We hope that if you're not already a member or a partnering organization of the Real Economic Impact Network, we hope that you will join us in this national movement on building a better economic future for persons with disabilities. The Real Economic Impact Network is an alliance of organizations and individuals dedicated to advancing the economic empowerment of people with disabilities. The network consists of more than 4,500 members located throughout the United States and includes nonprofit organizations, community tax coalitions, asset development organizations, financial education initiatives, corporations and private sector businesses, federal, state, local, and government agencies, and individuals and families with disabilities. If you're interested in joining the Real Economic Impact Network, please visit our website at www.realeconomicimpact.org and click on REI Network on the top bar, and it will take you to the site for more information. So in celebration of National Financial Capability Month, we are excited to have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau join us to provide an overview of the resources and tools that are available and that they provide. Today, we will also have them share with us information on financial well-being and share information on a report that they released earlier this year on defining financial well-being as looking at it as a step to financial education. We also will have CFPB highlight a report titled Consumer Voices on Credit Reports and Scores. This particular report, I feel, is extremely valuable to us as practitioners who are working with individuals with and without disabilities build their financial well-being. We will also have plenty of time today for questions and answers as well from each of you in the audience. We are grateful to have Irene Skricky join us today as our presenter. Irene is the Senior Financial Education Program Analyst in the Office of Financial Education within the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Consumer Education and Engagement Division. In this position, which Irene has held since August of 2011, she focuses on promoting innovation in the financial education field. Previously, before joining CFPB, Irene was a senior associate at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, where she managed the financial stability portfolio with a focus on innovation, consumer protection, financial access, and wealth building for low-income families. She also held positions at the Ford Foundation and the Coalition on Human Needs. Irene has a Bachelor of Science degree from MIT and a Master's of Public Affairs degree from Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School. So we're very fortunate and I'm very grateful to have Irene join us today to share with us information on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's resources, as well as on two great reports that they have published. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Irene. Irene?
Great. Thank you so much, Michael and Nakia. Michael, I did not realize you were going to pull up a picture of me, so it's always surprising to see one's own face looking back. And just, you all can't see me, but I want you to know, by great coincidence, I'm wearing today the exact same suit that I have on in that picture. So that is a completely authentic representation of me today. So I'm very happy to be here, and let's see if I can, yes, get the controls to work. So I am with the CFPB. As Michael said, I'm with the Office of Financial Education. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to talk to all of you about some of the tools that the Bureau has for financial educators and other practitioners, and also give you some quick highlights from two recent reports that came out in the last 2 to 3 months. So just quickly, most of you probably know who the CFPB is, but we're the new government agency in town. We're the new bank regulator that came out of the financial crisis of the late 2008, 2009. And we have 3 parts of our mission. One is to sort of educate consumers so that people can be the first line of defense in their own lives against abusive financial practices. Secondly, we enforce, so we supervise banks, credit unions, and other financial companies and enforce federal consumer laws. And we also study. We gather information about consumers, about markets, about financial services, and share that with the broad community. So I am obviously in the section that focuses on educating consumers. And just quickly, so you can see, that division is called Consumer Education and Engagement. So we are different from the side that does regulation and enforcement, that we work closely with them. And we have offices that we do what we call special populations, so financial empowerment, which actually deals with low-income and economically vulnerable, and actually has some work on folks with disabilities. They are a sister office to us. And some of you may know them. We also have an Office of Service Member Affairs for those in the military and veterans, older Americans, students. Consumer engagement does our digital properties, and then I am in the Financial Education Office, which is the kind of green box at the bottom there. We have kind of a broad mandate across the American public to work on financial education. So that is where we sit within the Bureau. And then in OFE, Office of Financial Education, we're looking at both delivering financial education directly as well as building awareness, doing research, and identifying effective practices. So the first thing I'm going to do really quickly is just run through, like really fast, some of the tools that the Bureau has available for financial educators. I won't dwell on them because I want to get to the content of the reports, but these are all things available to you for free. You can find them on our website. They're a little hard to find right now, but we are in the process within the next few weeks of having a page for financial educators that will have everything in one place. So very soon, hopefully they'll be a little easier to find, but the links are up here. So I think if this content is posted afterwards, you'll be able to get to all of these things. So I'll just say a few words on each. First is one of our newest resources on the web is Owning a Home Toolkit, which has a whole bunch of different sort of calculators and resources and checklists around buying a home. Probably the most unique part of it is what's called a rate checker, which will allow you to go in and put in your the price of the house you want to buy and your approximate kind of credit score and your geography, and it will give you a sense that day of what interest rates are for people in your approximate situation. It's not the same as an offer of credit, but it can at least give people sort of something to anchor on in terms of knowing, having a better sense as they shop for mortgages. So a nice resource there. A second resource, also in what we call our consumer experience modules, is Paying for College. This has been around for a couple of years, but this is a whole toolkit on the sort of financing of college, from understanding the different loan and grant options to understanding the cost of college and some of the repayment issues. Again, there's some calculators and some interesting things that link directly to the relative information amongst different universities and colleges registered with Department of Education, so you can see the average aid offered to students, the likely salaries based on different types of professions, and things that will actually help you understand your repayment responsibilities, and some information on loan forgiveness as well. So that's a useful resource. The next slide here, Submit a Complaint. This is our sort of classic Bureau resource, which is that we have a complaint system. We've handled about 550,000 complaints over the last 3 years, where you can submit either on the website or via phone in 187 languages. Complaint about a financial product or service. We actually then connect directly to the financial institutions, who are then mandated to reply to us, and in many cases the error gets fixed, or we can clarify what happened. We can do investigations if it's not if the information still seems to be incorrect. So this is a very nice way to kind of get your voice heard and oftentimes get problems resolved with financial products. So I strongly recommend that you use this with folks that you're working with. It's a nice resource. We also have a whole series of questions and answers online, about 1,000 or more, I think, which are in kind of plain language and I think are helpful around a number of different products. So again, something you can use with clients. We have a new page up on talking to children about money skills, trying to involve parents in that. So that's another, it's a joint with the FDIC, something else for those of you who are thinking about that, issue of communicating with kids and engaging parents in financial topics. Another tool is we have lots of publications, brochures, handouts, one-pagers on different, how to shop for a credit card, how to check a credit report. They're all available for free. You can order them in bulk. There's about at least 30 or 40 of them. I just gave a screenshot of the website you go to get them. It's not directly on our website, but you can order those. So if there's many things you might want to use with clients, some of them are available in other languages. And we also now have a partnership with libraries across the country, many library systems, to try to get financial education as one sort of service that libraries offer to their patrons. And so there's some materials on how to do that. We have a number of libraries, many libraries across the country are already participating, so that may be something for some of you to either encourage your own library to participate or engage with libraries near you that might be already part of this. And actually the tools for libraries are, I think, useful even for someone who's not in the library field. So that is also available on our website. Let's see what's next. Our sister office, Financial Empowerment, that I mentioned earlier, has a toolkit called Your Money, Your Goals, and it is really intended for social service providers, so caseworkers and other folks who are working with clients but for whom financial education is not their primary task, to better understand financial topics and help get clients started on sort of a path to better understanding their finances. While it's not originally intended for financial educators, we've heard many people say that it's a great toolkit for anyone to use, educators, clients, and others. And so there's a number of pieces of training of the actual toolkit, different modules, all available in English and Spanish on our website, so something that may interest all of you. We also have a number of resources for older Americans, some guidebooks around helping people manage money for older relatives who may have a sort of fiduciary or other type of arrangement to help them manage money. So some different guidebooks there that might be of interest. Excuse me. We also have a portal on our website to allow people to share their stories, not just their complaints, but also their stories, their experiences, pros and cons that help inform our thinking about finances, financial education, regulatory issues. So we encourage you to potentially have either you or your clients use that. And then lastly, to keep informed about all of these things, we have a financial education discussion group that the CFPB manages. In fact, I'm the one who moderates it. There's a flyer up here. You can join it. It's free if you know LinkedIn. But a lot of financial educators are on it now. It's about 900 people, and I post regular resources that the Bureau offers. And then other people can post their materials as well. So a lot of other groups you would know are also posting. So I encourage you all to join that. And now that those are the tools that I hope will be useful for folks. And now we'll turn to the fun part, which is the new content. So I'm first going to give some high-level findings from our financial well-being work, and then we'll pause for questions, and then I'll talk about the Consumer Credit Report work. So Office of Financial Education, excuse me, has been doing research to better understand the financial education field and consumers for a while. We look at both understanding consumers, their behaviors, motivations, perceptions, understanding the field, so what's effective, what are the challenges facing practitioners, and then sort of understanding effective practices generally. So this work I'll talk about today, actually both of these projects fit under the understanding consumers. In both cases, we will take what we learned from these reports and try to apply it to creating effective practices. So what we were trying to do here really was to come up with a definition for what we're all trying to accomplish. So it's great to say people are, know more about finances. It's great to say they have a better credit score, or they have more savings. But in the long run, those things are really means to an end, right? People are looking for something, not just a higher credit score. Maybe they're looking for a higher credit score so they can get a lower cost loan, so they can get a house because their goal is to have a house or to have better assistive technology, a van that allows them to get around that's modified for their needs. So there's a lot of goals that really aren't about the immediate financial outcome, about something more. And financial well-being is the term that's been used by the OECD, the international kind of world, by the U.S. National Strategy on Financial Education says we're striving to achieve financial well-being. But it has really not been defined. Everyone's kind of defined it their own way. And so we decided to put some time and effort into trying to determine what financial well-being meant for consumers, and that would sort of be the, what we would probably all think of as an underlying goal for financial education. And so we're trying to define this from the consumer perspective and better understand the knowledge, skills, attitudes, behaviors that would go into well-being and figure out how to measure it. That's kind of the goal. So what we did was over the last about year and a half, did some literature reviews. We always start out with that. And then we conducted in-depth interviews with a very diverse group of consumers of different ages, backgrounds, and also some financial educators, and consulted with some other experts to come up with a consumer and definition of financial well-being. So I will give you the definition. Is four easy steps. My guess is most people will say, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. It will probably resonate with, hopefully, with what a lot of you have experienced in your own lives and the lives of your clients. But I think it hasn't really been used as a goal in the past for financial education explicitly. So I think that is a contribution. So here's the definition. And then after this, I'll tell you what some of the, what we believe some of the factors are. First, well, summary is financial well-being is a state of being wherein a person can fully meet current and future financial obligations, feel secure in their financial future, and make choices that allow enjoyment of life. And so the four elements of that are sort of having control over your day-to-day finances, having the capacity to absorb a financial shock, being on track to meet your own self-defined financial goals, and having the financial freedom to make choices that allow you to enjoy life as you define it. So note, this is intentionally doesn't speak about income, about savings levels, about any numbers, because that's incredibly important, and we absolutely acknowledge the extreme importance of all the strategies that you and others work on around helping people improve their finances through, through employment, through access to benefits, all those other things. But at any point in time, we're dealing with people where they are, and they are going to have specific goals that they want to reach, and a lot of it is about sort of freedom and security. And so we've intentionally left those things out while acknowledging the importance of all of those other factors. So we're not at all saying that this is the only thing that matters in financial well-being, but this is sort of a definition that is sort of agnostic as to income. So another way to think about it is the kind of taglines one might use is that people are really interested in security, both in the present and the future. So security in the present is that control over your day-to-day finances. In the future, it's your ability to absorb a financial shock. Those are both things that we consider aspects of security. And then freedom of choice. People want to be able to make choices to enjoy life, and then in the longer term are on track to meet their own financial goals. And so what's nice about the definition is that it allows for people's very different definitions of what they want to accomplish. So if it's important to someone to help out family and friends, or to donate to charity or to their church, that's included. If your definition is to go to attain higher education or to have a bigger financial cushion, those are all things that under this definition is what you're striving for, is the ability to have those choices and to have security while you do that. So that's the definition. This diagram always looks to me like a floor plan for an apartment in Manhattan, but or anywhere, but that's not what it is. What it is, in fact, is just a way to think about financial well-being and what influences it. So if our definition is what I just read to you, what you saw on the last slide, that's over on the far right. How satisfied you are with your financial situation. What influences that? Well, certainly on the far left, what I was saying earlier, social and economic environment is extremely important, right? That's the world you live in, that's how you grew up, that's how much money you got from your parents, how much money you have now. Those are incredibly important. Another thing that's important is along the bottom right is available opportunities. So do you have access to things? Are there banks nearby? Are there products you qualify for? That's incredibly important too. Those we don't address in this definition. So again, very important, we don't address them. What we do address are these three. Personality and attitude, so how you tend to think, act, and feel. Behavior, what you actually do. And knowledge and skills, what you know and what you know how to do. The other piece in the middle, decision context, that's sort of like the behavioral economics world, if you're familiar with that. It's how the decision is presented, the context, the choices you're offered. That's important. We actually have other work on that. But that's not what's addressed directly in here. So it's those three colorful circles that we think drive our drivers, not the only drivers, of well-being, which you see on the right. So I'm going to say just a brief word about each of those three circles, what we think, the hypotheses we think are part of that, and that will be the bulk of that. So around financial behaviors, obviously behavior is what you actually do. In the research that we did, we saw 4 behaviors that supported financial well-being. So effective routine money management, again, fairly straightforward. Financial research and knowledge seeking. So not just what you knew, but if you knew how to get what you needed, where to find something. So that was another key behavior. The third, financial planning and goal setting, very important. We all know that. And fourth, following through on decisions. You can make a great financial decision. I decide almost daily to diet, and almost every day I don't follow through on that decision. So I think we all kind of understand at some gut level, no pun intended, the importance of following through. And so our little tagline to remember those 4 are balance, ask, plan, and act. So again, sort of balancing day to day, asking the right questions, planning, and then acting on those plans. So that's the hypothesis around financial behavior and its relationship to well-being. The second area is financial knowledge, and I'll say another few sentences about that, which is that I think the existing literature, and probably again at some level we all recognize this from our own lives and from our work with clients, is that factual knowledge alone is not enough to drive behavior change. Again, I know not to eat the cookies, but I do. People may or may not know, how to calculate compound interest rate, right, one of the classic financial literacy questions. We're not sure if that knowledge alone is going to lead you to greater financial well-being, because that kind of factual knowledge, the link between that kind of knowledge and behavior is not straightforward and is mediated by other things like personality, attitudes, decision context. And so our hypothesis here is that the important thing about knowledge is what type of knowledge is going to support well-being and support behaviors. And we posited something called, set of skills called financial ability. Again, when you see what this is on the next page, you'll probably say, well, of course. It's always good when things are kind of intuitive. But the financial ability, again, sort of definition or framing that we have is knowing when and how to find reliable information. So again, kind of knowing how to find it, not just what you know, but knowing that you can find it and having a sense of where to go and figuring out what's trustworthy. Secondly, it's knowing how to process that information, knowing whether it really applies to you. I could read about investment advice, but if my issue is opening a savings account, that information might not be relevant. So knowing how it applies to your situation, and then knowing how to execute, to actually make things happen, to act. And that's not always all that easy in some cases, figuring out how to keep yourself on track. As to what causes or what's linked to financial ability, all kinds of things, right? Upbringing, social context, personal networks, personal observation, clearly education matters, so a whole bunch of things. But the idea is maybe financial education could focus on the financial ability skills rather than just, sort of straightforward financial knowledge. And then turning to the last category, there we go. The last of those three colorful circles on the earlier diagram was personal traits. These also will probably resonate with people. The four things that the research showed mattered in terms of achieving financial well-being were internal frame of reference, so comparing yourself to your own standards, not to others, not deciding I have to own what the other person owns, but saying this is what I want, the goal that I'm trying to achieve. Secondly, perseverance, right, or grit, being motivated to stay on track. Executive functioning, kind of a new issue people are talking a lot about these days, but that's that set of functions, brain functions in a way, that help you plan for the future, control impulses, think creatively to address challenges. And then lastly, financial self-efficacy, which is believing in your ability to influence your own financial situation. You got to have some confidence to believe you can do it as one of the precursors. All of those things together, I think, again, what's interesting about this is those are all great. Probably a lot of people will say, yeah, that makes sense. I think what we're hoping is that some of these concepts may actually be something that can be added to or can help enrich existing financial education. So probably a lot of people are already doing a lot of these things in their work just because their gut says it's the right thing to do, or they understand you need to help people, plan and act. We're hoping some of these concepts may help people to add things to their financial education or tweak things, and we would love to know back which ones work and which don't. This research, this definition, is really a foundation for us. It's a starting point. What we're doing next with is when we're sharing the definition, and there is a whole report behind this that is available on our website. You can read in much more detail about all this. The next step for us is we are actually developing a measurement tool, a scale, essentially a set of survey questions that measures financial well-being. So fairly simple, hopefully not more than about 20 questions that will try to ferret out, people's sense of security, their ability to manage shocks, their sense of freedom of choice in the present and the future. And those questions we will then be doing, most likely be doing a national survey to kind of look at, and it will be a scale, so you won't be financially well-being, well or not, but it would be a scale with a different set of, levels. And we would be looking at creating some national data to better understand, the sort of sense of well-being of the American consumer, and then trying to look at actually testing those hypotheses to say, is our definition of financial ability actually make sense? If people do have, higher level of financial self-confidence, does that actually lead to more well-being? And so that you could actually then use it as a sort of tool to test those hypotheses and also eventually to potentially use it with clients or in program evaluation, though initially our intention is really to just create discussion and a way to kind of measure the concept. So we're also doing some work extending that to young people, looking at the sort of precursors to those components of well-being. There'll be another report on that coming out sometime this year. And so essentially we think the contributions are really creating a definition of well-being that's been derived from consumers and what they think, providing some hypotheses that can be tested, creating the concept of financial ability. And so we really hope that this makes sense to people. We'd love to hear feedback on this, and there'll be more things coming out over time. So we want this to really support the financial education field and figure out how we can better, as a group, really define our successes in helping people to become kind of better off. So I am going to stop there on financial well-being and let people ask any questions that they might have. Give us a little time to interact, and then we'll turn to the consumer credit reports content in a minute. So this is the time when I stop and we see if people have questions.
Great. So thank you so much, Irene. So we do have some questions that have come in. If there's additional questions or you have a question specifically on the information that has been shared so far, please send me an email, or you can send it through the chat box or the question and answer box. So the first question that has come in is, how do you define financial shock?
I think it was, I don't know if we had a precise definition, but essentially anything that is going to create a financial problem for you. So typically it would mean job loss, right? Medical emergency, medical bills, bankruptcy, anything that changes your financial situation. I don't know that we got any more precise than that.
Okay. So the next question is when you, or when the focus groups were put together, did the focus groups include persons with disabilities?
That is a good question. I don't think we deliberately selected for that, so I'm not sure if, it was done through a vendor, so I'm not sure if any of them were. Certainly if there were some folks who had disabilities, it would not have been a large number. So this may not reflect, there may be maybe additional tweaks to this that would be relevant to that population that we didn't capture. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that, actually, either now or in some other form.
All right. So if folks have thoughts on that, please send it to the chat or send me an email, and then we can revisit that. The next question that has come in is looking at the different words. We have financial health, we have financial capabilities. Now we're learning about financial well-being, financial ability. How do we distinguish which words to use?
That's an excellent question. I'm kind of smiling to myself because we are, at one point we had only financial literacy. I mean, back in the old days of, 10 or 15 years ago, and then everyone said it's not about literacy, it's about education, and then it became capability, and then it became well-being and health, and so it's sort of an explosion of words. I mean, I think at least conceptually, both well-being and I mean, really health has been used, financial health has been used by CFSI, financial well-being by the Bureau. They're basically the same thing, and I think it's just we were working on projects while we coordinate. We ended up with different terms, but those are both, I think, meant to be kind of the goal, the end state that you're working towards, and the others are, are processes or skills that get you there. I mean, I think, so, financial literacy has been sort of the knowledge piece. This is my own thinking. Don't attribute this necessarily to the Bureau or the federal government, but literacy felt like, it's what you know, and then we moved on to it's what you do, and that's capability, which also includes access. And education, financial education was really a methodology to get you along that pathway. I think financial ability is similar to financial capability. I wouldn't say that to my colleague who authored it, but I feel like they're really about applying knowledge and action together to get somewhere. So one could make a really nice little diagram of all those terms. In fact, I'm feeling inspired to do that about where they might fall. But I think the key things are really that both financial health and financial well-being are meant to be the end goals, and the other pieces are all things that that get you there. At least that's, I think, how we're thinking about it. So not a precise answer. That's something the whole field will have to think about together, and what terms do we all want to use. But that would be how I kind of think about it right now.
Great. So we have a couple more questions, then we'll go back into the remaining content. So what is the plan to disseminate the survey questions, tools to financial educators? Is that the only audience?
No, not at all. In some ways, and again, these things are planned, tentative, so not written in stone. But the plan is to do our own national survey using the questions, which are being created and validated now, so we can start to better understand the relationship between the hypotheses and the data. And so we'll be sharing the questions with a lot of other researchers. So we would love it if these questions got picked up by FINRA does a national financial capability survey. There's other big national data sets. There's other researchers who could use them. It would be nice to have some common use of adding these questions into other existing survey instruments so we can get more information. So certainly the research community is a big audience. I mean, I think the whole world of financial education writ large, so people who work with clients not just in our FinEd field, but financial planners and other people who are thinking about people's financial kind of futures, it would be of use to a wide array of folks. And while it's not, and so I can imagine you have a shorter version of it that an individual can go and just use themselves, and then had some sort of advice attached to it. So, it looks like you're very financially confident, but you could use a little more help on financial research. Here's things you could do with it. So a consumer could use it directly. And then, again, our goal was not program evaluation. This is not meant to be a tool to see if your program works or not, but it could certainly be used over time in that way if people are trying to see if their work on credit scores or on employment or something else is leading to financial well-being. It could be integrated into other types of program evaluation. So I think we will share it broadly. I mean, our plan will be, I'm sure we'll have we have assorted vehicles, listservs and press and other things we do. For financial educators, the LinkedIn site I mentioned earlier, the LinkedIn discussion group, is one mechanism, and we are also, I'm close to being able to announce just a more robust way of communicating, getting information out to financial educators and getting feedback back, which I hope when we announce it in the next month or two, we can send it to NDI and you guys may be able to distribute it, but it'll be a way to get information out on the scale and the survey and how people can use it. So I would love other ideas for those other communities we should reach. And I probably, that would just, because one question will probably be, and when will this happen? Tentatively this fall, we should have the scale done, and then hopefully release wouldn't be too long after that. So we're talking in the next, in the next 4 to 6 months, we should be hopefully getting this out there. So
Great.
Not too long a wait.
Yeah, so this is definitely something that the NDI's Real Economic Impact Network can really help to get out information to make sure
Great.
that the disability voice is a part of that as well.
Wonderful.
We still have a few more questions, but what I'd like to do is I'm going to go on and hold on those questions and see if you can go on and we can go on and go through the other information that you have.
Sure.
The next report is one of my favorites, and so I want to make sure we have adequate time to go through that.
Great. And I have to say, Michael's made me very happy by telling me how much he likes this next report, which was when it was my my project here. And it's a little more straightforward, so this won't be as, it's not as complicated and conceptual. In this case, the Bureau, in addition to all of our sort of regulatory and, heavy number crunching kind of research, we also really want to understand what consumers think and feel and what motivates them, so that we can better shape our own sort of financial education and better understand how consumers are, managing in the financial world. So in order to do that, we have done a number of things, but one is this focus group project where we went out and talked to consumers about their experiences with credit reports and scores. And again, our intention is really to inform our financial education and that of others around consumers' the way they are interacting with their scores. So, I thought I had a methodology slide here. Let me see. Okay, well, there's one slide missing, so I'll just say quickly, just so you know what we did. Actually, maybe it's after this one. Let me just see. Yes, okay, no wonder. I put them in different order. So you guys probably don't need to hear this. Why do credit reports matter? Why do consumers viewing their credit reports and scores matter? Well, it allows them to identify and correct any errors, which, as we all know, is not uncommon. People with more accurate perceptions of their credit standing may be better equipped to to access and shop for credit. And then people who check their credit reports have access to information that may help them generally work on their financial situation. It may feed into some of those financial well-being things we talked about earlier. So what we did was last spring and summer, we conducted focus groups with a total of 308 consumers in 4 different areas, 4 different regions, and we asked about consumer attitudes, perceptions, motivations, and actions around credit reports and scores. So this gave us qualitative insights into a broad range of consumer thinking, but it was not representative. It was a diverse sample, but not representative. So we're very clear that this is not meant to be a comprehensive, view into the perspectives of consumers. Generally, our participants were a little more active in the credit markets and probably than the general population. So keep that in mind. So just to summarize quickly, we heard, interestingly, people knew a lot, and they were also confused about a lot of things simultaneously. So I think compared to even a few years ago, as a result of probably financial crisis, just more attention to credit reports generally, there was a fairly high level of awareness, interest, and concern amongst the consumers we talked to. People generally understood how their credit history affected their lives in terms of access to credit, cost of credit, other issues like, employment and housing. They may not know exactly how or in what way, but they knew that it mattered. They generally knew that there were multiple bureaus and multiple scores. They generally understood that their financial behavior was part of what goes into a score, and that some events, bad credit things will disappear over time from their credit scores. Areas of confusion, people were very often confused about credit reports and scores, the relationship between them, puzzled by the differences across the various reports, because as many of you probably know, there are multiple bureaus and multiple types of reports, specialty reports, different lenders use in different ways, so it's very complicated. People were uncertain how to access free credit reports, and I think one of the most important things was people were uncertain if accessing a free report would impact their scores. Everybody kind of knew that too many inquiries into credit score would impact their score. What they were not clear that when you go through the access point for your free annual credit report, that would not impact your score. So I thought that was quite an important finding. And despite the fact that they knew their behavior impacted their score, they still felt it was sort of out of their control, or some of it, because it is a big, complicated system, right? It's confusing. It's a little, makes people sort of feel uneasy. So a few other kind of more specific findings. We found that consumers check their credit reports, scores in several ways. Online, sometimes through annualcreditreport.com, which is the free government-mandated service, or other sites. People were often uncertain which ones were truly free and were suspicious that they might get charged, which is a legitimate concern in some cases. Many people saw credit scores on their credit card statement or online from their financial institution. That's a trend that a number of financial institutions are putting people's scores monthly on their statements. It's actually an opportunity, we think, for people to see their score and say, oh, I should learn more about this. Many of the folks we talked to, in fact, weren't quite sure what to do once they saw the score, so that's another financial education opportunity. And then some people saw their scores or reports in other ways through credit monitoring service because of a data breach, after being denied credit, or if they went in to get a loan, they would sometimes be shown their score or report by their lender. Some of the challenges we heard, people were, as I mentioned before, uncomfortable with or had difficulty navigating through annualcreditreport.com, particularly the security questions, the authentication questions. If any of you have tried it before, you know you have to answer some questions to prove who you are, and that often really, people were very baffled or felt uncomfortable with that. And then they weren't sure, again, about whether requesting their credit report would impact their score. And then folks, once they got their report, often felt overwhelmed, and they're not necessarily that easy to read. And they often said they were confused because they didn't recognize the names of the creditors on the credit report. In some cases, financial institutions or creditors have holding companies or other companies, they may appear under a different name than what the consumer is familiar with, or in some cases their loan has been sold. And so people found that confusing. One interesting thing I think we heard was that many consumers seem to have kind of a binary sense of credit scores. They felt like there's people with really good credit who get great offers, and then there's all the rest of us. And so people didn't feel really empowered if they didn't feel they had good credit to really do much about it. So they didn't always realize that, that incremental improvements can actually make a difference. And so a better understanding that you don't have to have, you don't have to think you have no hope other than getting a very, very high credit score, that there were things you could do, was a message I think we think is important. Many folks didn't know how to improve their scores, and people rarely reported trying to use their knowledge of their score to negotiate around credit access or cost. I mean, in a day of automated underwriting, it's not as easy to negotiate as it used to be, and to some degree, but some people did try and were often told that, oh, that's not the right score, or, that doesn't apply to you. So it wasn't as empowering as one might hope. So the last thing that we did was to kind of look across all the people we talked to and look at sort of how they segmented, first by behavior and then by underlying motivation or kind of perspective. And so there were broadly 4 kind of categories of credit checking behavior: those who checked fairly frequently, those who checked in the past but hadn't checked recently, excuse me, those who'd never checked, and those who what we call passively checked, meaning they had seen it but not because they sought it out, typically on their credit card statement. So within those, I think the more interesting piece is we then looked at the underlying motivations behind those behaviors, because the idea is that if we understand why people are doing something, it's easier for us to reach them through a message. So you don't want to give a message to someone saying it's important to check your credit if that person has already tried to and was uncomfortable with security questions. Like that message isn't going to resonate. Or if they aren't checking because they're afraid their score is really, really low. So I think this helps us think about how to target financial education messages by segment. So under active checkers that we saw, again, these are broad general categories. They're not completely fixed. They're not necessarily all-encompassing. But the ones we observed were folks who were motivated by fraud or error. They had had a problem before, identity theft, something like that, and they really wanted to check regularly to make sure that wasn't happening again. And then there were other folks who were gauging their progress. Either they were happy about their credit and wanted to keep getting affirmation, or they were in the process of improving their credit score and wanted to gauge where they were. Again, so those are 2 fairly different motives for active checkers. For people who checked before, the first idea, it should say don't need to know, although don't need to know now may be equally accurate. I need to add the K to that. But folks who feel like, I've checked before, I don't really need to know now. I'm not about to buy anything. It's not important to my life right now. Similar to that are those folks who are expecting no change. They've checked before, everything seems about the same, they don't really think anything's changed. And the one kind of counter to that might be that, well, it's possible that you're not about to buy something, but if there had been any sort of, fraud or error or something, you wouldn't know if you're not checking. So again, knowing that motive can help motivate people to potentially take action. And then the third motivational segment there is people who had tried it and didn't like it. They either didn't like what they saw, or quite often they didn't like the process. They were worried that by putting their Social Security number in, they were potentially subject to identity theft. They were uncomfortable with something about it, and so they didn't want to do it again or hadn't been planning to do it again. Under the people who had never checked, which was a relatively small proportion of our sample, there were those who don't see the need. They're like, I'm not doing anything right now. I don't want to know, don't need to know. Again, potentially not realizing the impact that checking could have on sort of starting up their financial lives. The folks who fear the process, they don't know how to do it, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, the whole thing's terrifying, they don't want to talk about it. Again, that's a different thing that one could address through helping clarify how one checks. And then the last group interestingly, avoiding the pain, people who are convinced their credit score is terrible and they just don't want to know anymore. They think it's going to be really, really bad. And I think some of the data from other studies shows that it's often not as bad as people think. They often believe they have a worse credit score than they do. Sometimes people think every late fee I pay dings my credit score, but if you paid 10 days late, you weren't 30 days late, you may have paid a fee, but that may not, that's not going to be on your credit report. So things may not be as bad as you think. I mean, they may be as bad as you think, but they may not. And so I think helping people to understand that avoiding isn't necessarily a good strategy in the long run is, again, a potential message coming out of that. And then the last category, as I said earlier, are the passive checkers. And these are folks, so it's sort of a new group in a way, because financial institutions and creditors have really started this effort to put credit scores on monthly statements really only in the last couple years maybe. And so quite a few people, Discover's doing it, several other companies have started, there's a whole bunch who are signing up to do so now. So a lot of Americans are starting to see their score who either hadn't seen it before or hadn't really looked at it regularly. And that's a real opportunity because it's getting people's attention, and it gives us a chance as financial educators to say, here's something that you could, this is an opportunity for you to look at where you are, to maybe go get the full report, to think about how you can use that as a tool in your financial life. And so that set of folks who are passive checkers who have seen their credit score but don't know what to do is, I think, a real opportunity, a segment that we're definitely thinking about how we can reach out to. So those were our segments. And then, again, the implications, as I said, are really understanding the segments and the kind of particular confusions that people have allow us to better design financial education to meet consumers where they are and to reach out to them in messages that resonate with their own interests. We think it implies that there should be a lot that could be done to make credit reports easier to check, and that's really something that falls on the credit reporting agencies. And so we certainly encourage that to try to make things easier to get and easier to read. And then, as I mentioned before, Open Credit Score Initiative is the term for all those companies who are putting scores on statements. And so we feel that provides an opportunity, again, to help people take action when they see their score. So for us, those were the implications, and I think that leads us to questions. So I would love to hear what people think and answer any questions people might have.
Great. So thank you, Irene. So we have several questions that have come in. I think it's saying, what are the differences in knowledge and confusion based on traditional versus alternative credit reports and scores?
We did not distinguish between. I mean, people. I went to a bunch of these focus groups. It was very interesting. People had such fascinating life experiences and perspectives, and some people knew a little bit about, like, utilities and rent ought to be included, and that's some of the things that are included in some of the alternative scores. But we didn't actually really delve into that in the focus group. So I didn't get the sense that there was a lot of deep knowledge about that. Again, there was an inkling that some people had that good payment behavior isn't always reflected, but we don't have much more nuance than that.
All right, great. So the next question is, how might consumers think about understanding their well-being score in relation to their credit score? More confusion? Question mark. Opportunity for clarity? Question mark.
That's a great question.
That's a good question, isn't it?
Yes, I love it. I love it. That's something I think we need to think more about. I mean, in the immediate term, any well-being survey or scale that we share with consumers is, first, it's going to be, it's not immediate that it's going to be kind of out there in the consumer consciousness. And secondly, financial well-being score, we don't anticipate having any impact on your access to credit, or you're getting employed, or credit scores themselves have real impact in people's lives right now. The well-being score is more of almost a self-diagnostic. So I think we're interested in seeing what the relationship is between credit score and well-being, and where we can learn something about if it turns out that improving credit scores is a major driver because of all the behavioral changes that are required to get that credit score up, and that leads to well-being, that would be a wonderful finding. But I don't so we'd love to think about that relationship. I doubt the average consumer is actually going to say, I'm not sure which of these to pay attention to, because in the immediate term, credit scores have a much bigger market awareness, shall we say, and right now have a lot more impact, obviously, on people's, real things in people's lives. The well-being work will take a while, I think, to really, reach an audience much more deeply. I'd love it if it happened, but I think that'll be a longer-term process. But we'd love to explore that concept more, that relationship.
Great. Well, we have 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left to this webinar. And so we will have to stop the questions. But what we will do is we will pull these questions that you have submitted. I will share them with Irene. We will create a response, and then we will distribute them back out to those who attended today. I would like to thank Irene for this information that she shared with us today, and for being a part of celebrating National Financial Capability Month with us. I would like to just share a few additional items with you before we close out this webinar. If you have not filed your taxes, just note you have a little bit more time. And when you go to the free tax preparation sites, to a VITA site, and there's a long line and it's full, you can't get an appointment, check out myfreetaxes.com. This is a national initiative that's championed by 3 leading nonprofits, United Way, Goodwill Industries, as well as the National Disability Institute, and it is sponsored by Walmart Foundation. You can go to www.myfreetaxes.com to refer individuals and or to file your taxes. So we hope that you will share that information with individuals you're working with if they have not filed their taxes yet. If you have any questions, please email my colleagues at partners@myfreetaxes.com. I'd also like to share with you that we have a new project, our new division to the National Disability Institute, and that is called the American Dream Employment Network. And this is an authorized National Administrative Employment Network under the Social Security Administration's Ticket to Work. This ADEN, as we call it, supports the administrative duties that are performed by NDI's ticket experts. If you'd like to learn more about ADEN, the American Dream Employment Network, please send an email to info@americandreamen.org. So please check that out as well. Once again, we hope that you'll join the movement and be a part of this conversation nationally in working to build a better economic future for persons with disabilities. We appreciate CFPB and the work that they're doing to advance the economic self-sufficiency of persons with disabilities. To sign up for this, to join the network, which is free to join, go to our website, realeconomicimpact.org. Finally, I'd like to share with you that our next webinar, as we will be recognizing Mental Health Awareness Month, we will be having a webinar with the American Psychological Association, and we'll be looking at their report that they put out on money and stress. It's a fascinating report, and I think that as practitioners, this is important information for us to hear. And we're also going to hear some steps and tools and resources that we can access to help our clients manage their financial stress. And so it's going to go into more the emotional side of having financial, of an individual's money and stress. And so we hope you'll join us for that webinar. It will be on May 13th at 3 p.m. I would also like to thank my colleague, Nakia Matthews, for the work that she does to help put this together each month. I'd also like to recognize the National Disability Institute's Training and Technical Assistance team, who also helps to put these webinars together. So again, thank you to Irene and to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and thank you to each of you for participating on today's webinar. After the webinar, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to send me an email at mroush@ndi-inc.org, and we will be sure to get your questions answered. So again, thanks so much for participating today, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you.